Forbes India presents AWS The Mavericks in association with IvyCap Ventures.
Hello and welcome to Forbes India presents AWS The Mavericks, Future of Fintech, How Will It Be Different from Today? My name is Manu Balachandran, and joining me today are two stalwarts from the world of business and technology. We have Mr. Ankush Agarwal, the Chief Business Officer at Ola, and Mr. Nitin Bavankule, Director and Head DNB, India and South Asia, AWS. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me today. It's been over 3 years since one of the biggest disruptions took place around us. While we have all recovered from that, what's fascinating is the impact it has had on our financial service industry, and particularly in fintech, thanks to large-scale adoption of technology and digitization. Now, as we look at the cusp of a disruption, the future of fintech is likely to be characterized by further advancements in technology, increasing competition, and a shift towards more personalization. With the rise of blockchain and other distributed ledger technologies, we may see a greater emphasis on decentralization and peer-to-peer transactions. Artificial intelligence and machine learning will continue to play a significant role in areas such as risk management and fraud prevention. Overall, the e-commerce landscape will continue to evolve rapidly, offering new opportunities for innovation and disruption in the financial industry. On that note, let me begin today's discussion with opening comments from both our panelists on where India's fintech industry stands today. Ankush, we'll start with you and then we'll move to.
Sure. Thank you, Manu, and thanks for having me over. I think you've captured the basic essence of what's happening on the ground in the financial services and specifically the fintech ecosystem in India right now. I think what is without a doubt, no one can question is the overall opportunity in financial services. And financial services as a vertical is one of the first to jump onto new technology trends. And some of the words that you used, AI, decentralization, compute power, all of these are going to have a significant impact in financial services and the world around us. Digitization, accessibility, financial inclusion are all going to be the trends that you will start seeing much more in the future. And this is also in line with what we are seeing a lot of the work happening on the ground.
Right. Nitin, your opening thoughts on where we stand as, in terms of our fintech prowess?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Manu, and thanks, Ankush, for sharing the initial thoughts. I think as a fintech industry, we've already become a global fintech superpower, right? If you look at the fintech evolution in this country over the last decade or so, we are already the third largest fintech ecosystem globally. We have the second largest number of fintechs founded globally in this country. We are number one for real-time payments globally. 46% of all real-time transactions worldwide in 2022 happened in India. 75% of all retail digital payments in India is UPI. We have more than 25 fintech unicorns in this country. So the reason I'm giving you the stats is just to tell you the sheer development and the progress fintech as an industry in the just about less than a decade has made in this country. And with new players coming in and new technology being adopted, and as you rightly said, be it personalization, fraud detection, AI, ML, generative AI, multiple things coming in, we are at the cusp of the next evolution of this industry, be it right from wealth management to insurance management to fintech to UPI payments. There's so many things which are happening. And I think we are just waiting for another big revolution to happen over the next decade or so.
Interesting. Just a follow-up to that. I mean, even for AWS from that perspective, what is the market opportunity that is available for you?
From a market opportunity for AWS, I think I would go from a technology perspective. The more and more innovation happens in the fintech industry, the bigger and the better opportunity size for any cloud provider. And we are the leading cloud provider in the country. So obviously, most of these fintech unicorns are on AWS. So if you look at the opportunity size, is not about the revenue. It's more about the ability for us to innovate with these players and bring in the power of financial inclusion in the hands of common man in India. If you look from a perspective, even today, there are close to 800 million internet users in this country. Of the 1.4 billion population, 800 million internet users. But if you really see financial inclusion, that is still restricted or maybe expanded maybe up to 300, 350 million. The opportunity size is to get the next 500 million people onto this financial inclusion. And I think that is the opportunity for AWS and all the fintech players in this country.
Absolutely. Let me, Ankush, let me bring you here. Sorry, please go ahead.
I would just second what Nitin just mentioned, right? So with the advent of AI, and the adoption that you will start seeing in financial services of AI, of generative AI, and a lot of natural language models, you will see the importance of compute and cloud compute go up significantly. And you'll see a lot of fintechs have their independent cloud strategy as well. And the collaboration between platforms like AWS, traditional institutes, and new age fintechs becomes even more important going forward.
Interesting. So then in that sense, Ankush, what are some of the key factors driving the future growth and development of the fintech industry, according to you?
I think one is, so in India specifically, the opportunity is massive, and it's across all verticals, be it lending, be it insurance, or be it wealth tech. India has a massive potential upside for growth. We're all aware in lending specifically, the number of unbanked population in the country who don't even have a CIBIL score, close to 300 million people in India. Although the number of demat accounts have increased over the past 2 years during the COVID timeframe, there is still a lot of headroom for growth that is still there to be capitalized on. And with digitization, with the smartphone in the hand of every individual, with a lot of work being done on data privacy, security, a lot of this becomes much more accessible to the common man.
Right.
And with digitization of financial products and the convenience of accessing it from your home, we're seeing a lot more people come on board to the financial ecosystem than what we have seen over the past 5 years, and the 5 years before that. And that is what I believe will be a massive trend continued over the next 5 years, which you will see a lot more trends in financial inclusion, a lot of the banked population also coming on. There's a lot of work happening in the infrastructure layers like Oaken, et cetera, which will also leapfrog us into the next dimension.
So just, for a very long time, India as a country, we've, cash has been king. Do you think these innovations that will happen will take place there, or, it'll just be on the technology side? And then what's really the role of cash now going forward? And I think both of you can sort of, give your thoughts on that.
Nitin, why don't you?
So, yeah, I think the role of cash in India still is there, primarily because, as I said, of the 1.4 billion population, about 800 million use internet, or their internet users, and of that, maybe 300 to 400 million people have started using UPI on a regular basis. The balance are still using it, but maybe not on a regular basis. But I think, as Ankush rightly said, over the next 5 to 6 years, with the advent of machine learning, AI, fraud detection, if we are able to spread the inclusion, the financial inclusion to the next 500 million more. So we'll touch close to 800 to 900 million Indians using fintechs for B2B, B2C, insurance, wealth management, every form of fintech, every form of financial transaction. I think the role of cash will keep on decreasing with every day. Will it disappear? I can't really say about that. But yes, I think already 75% of retail transactions are done on UPI. So I think we will be very close to 90% if in the next 3 to 5 years. That's the way I would look at it.
Interesting. Nitin, any thoughts on that? Ankush, any thoughts on that?
Echo what Nitin said. I think cash has a role to play in the economy. India is a developing economy. The economy is increasing year on year. So the circulation of cash is not going to disappear immediately, right? And there is a use case, and the more you go bottom of the pyramid, the more use of cash you will find on the ground. So cash has a definite use case, but it will slowly start decreasing, and people will start coming into the much more organized ecosystem in the future. Although
Right.
financial services and fintech is not restricted to only the digital transactions only, right?
Right.
Fintech can be enabled on the bottom of the pyramid layer also, who transact mainly in cash. How much money you have in your account, how you transact is just one data point out of the million other data points that technology can actually leverage from a customer. You could transact in cash, but you would still be digitally native. And that is where the power of fintech actually lies. It's not just digital transactions. That's an important, very important infrastructure layer on its own, but that's not the
Right.
be all and end all for fintech.
Absolutely. Very fascinating. So, when we're speaking about Ola, how is Ola Financial Services using cloud computing, to expand its portfolio in financial services, including, say, insurance, lending, online payments, or even tapping the bottom of the pyramid?
Got it. So at Ola, our strategy is predominantly to use financial services across the mobility ecosystem for us. We obviously have India's largest ride-sharing company at Ola Cabs, and at Ola Electric, we also have India's largest Ola Electric company. Now, the role of Ola Financial Services is across these two ecosystems, where we build financial products across lending and insurance for the mobility use case. Now, it could be owned mobility, which means we help access credit for the purchase of an electric two-wheeler made by Ola. It could be get access to the best-in-class insurance warranty products that again are distributed by us. And on the shared mobility space, which is the ride-sharing space, we enable seamless payments. We enable access to sachetized insurance products for both consumers and drivers. And what cloud enables us to do is fundamentally it enables us to be a very, very agile company. Right? There's a lot more personalization, etc., that you can do. A lot. Your speed of execution grows up multifold and exponentially if you leverage the cloud strategy clearly. Yeah.
Interesting. Nitin, when it comes to technology adoption, where do Indian sort of DNBs stand compared to their global counterparts?
I would say very high, but let me elaborate rather than just giving you a two-word answer. Obviously, India is a unique, primarily, if you look at it, there's one big thing which makes India very unique. If you compare India versus most of the Western developed markets like US or Europe or UK or Australia or Japan, Korea. And I think that's the scale part of it. The scale is humongous for us. We talk only in millions. We don't talk in 100,000s. We talk in millions for anything and everything. That's the first part of it. Second, because of the way our country is geographically spread out and the kind of cultural and every type of diversity we bring in, the Indian entire ecosystem, ecosystem is very unique, because whenever, for example, any founder, any startup has to think about catering to the India market, it's not about talking to one homogeneous population. It's talking to at least 25 to 30 different states which have their own culture, language, everything is different, right? So it's about talking to 25 different markets. And I think those two things make Indian DNBs very stand apart. And that's where technology once again plays a big role. Now, I've already said that we are already a third largest tech startup ecosystem in the world. We have over 27,000 active startups as per NASSCOM. If you look at fintech, we had over 8.7 billion transactions in March 2023, just 2 months back. 8.7 billion transactions. That's a scale which is unbelievable, right? Think of any game tech industry, for example. IPL is going on. We are in the midst of an IPL, which is very interesting. The fantasy gaming literally peaks 30 minutes before the game starts. And at that point of time, there are millions of consumers or millions of gamers who are interested in making their games, which is once again an unheard kind of a scale in any developed market, because they just don't have that kind of a scale. Think of Hotstar, for example, a media OTT player. When IPL was there last year, they hit close to 25 million concurrent users. That's an unbelievable number, even in a developed market like US for YouTube, which is one of the largest OTT players in the world. Think about social commerce. There are millions of sellers on most of the social commerce platforms. And one of the leading social commerce platform in this country had 91 crore orders in 2022. 91 crore orders in 2022. So when you ask me how different are DNBs in India versus anywhere in the world, I don't think anywhere else in the world, maybe barring China, but obviously we cannot think about China because it's a very different league. The scale itself makes it very different. And the second part is the diversity of the market makes innovation very uniquely different in this country, because every innovator has to think about 20, 25 different markets rather than one single market. And that applies to literally every vertical, be it fintech, edtech, health tech. Obviously, that's the way I would look at it.
Absolutely, very very fascinating insights. Just a follow up to that, Nitin. When you talk about sort of customer experience for digital natives, that are born on the cloud, embracing technology is absolutely necessity. But how should they sort of go about effectively balancing the benefits of automation and technology with the need for that human connection and empathy in creating that customer experience?
Um, Very, very valid question, because I think, and I'll give you a classic example just to start from your perspective, saying how do you give that human experience or human empathy? While shopping in India is a family experience, right? And India is a very different social kind of, when you think about shopping or going to a mall in India, it's like a family experience which you give. Whereas when you're trying to shop online, it's a very not a human touch kind of a thing. And I think that is where social commerce came in. I think that's where a lot of innovation happened. For example, saying, okay, how do I ensure that I'm able to talk to my friends, get advice from my friends, suggestions from my friends, and then do shopping. And I do shopping from people whom I know rather than people whom I don't know. So that's where the millions of sellers came in. And from what I read, close to 70 to 80% of the sellers on social commerce platform had never ever done selling. So they were first time sellers. So I think that has, once again, this is a very good mix of technology enabling transactions, but at the same time also getting the social part and ensuring that the human touch is not lost out. That's one example. And I'm sure there will be many such examples in fintech. The one classic example of bringing in empathy is how are you taking care of the lowest strata of the society and bringing financial inclusion to them. I think that's the second part of how human empathy is taking care. And I think there are so many fintechs who are taking care of that. When you talk about mobility, I think once again, I'm sure Ankush can talk about a lot about that, how they are taking care that the people who really have struggled to have mobility on their own. First, they started off with their own Ola cabs, and now with the two-wheelers. I think that's where technology as well as digital innovation is taking care of not only bringing the best of the technology to the consumers, but also ensuring that they do not lose touch with their family, society, and the overall Indian community.
Ankush, would you have some sort of examples or some insights on that, on what Nitin just mentioned?
Yeah, sure. I think it's a great question, first of all, especially in a country like India, which is a global melting, not a global, but it's a melting pot of a multitude of different cultures across geographies. There's no one size fits all approach at all in India, even in the same city, leave alone the entire country. So empathy, personalization, and customization are actually key to what you offer the customer. And that is why the long tail in India is longer than most economies you would find. And in e-commerce, you will find that with newer infrastructure layers like ONDC, with obviously the evolution of AI, hyper-personalization, customization, saturation, a lot of this will get addressed. You will enable journeys, you will enable communication with the customer, which is a lot more personalized than a rule book or a decision tree based approach.
Right.
And the models, we're starting to see some of these things start coming up already in both e-commerce and fintech. But I do believe there's a lot of space of innovation in this space, a lot of experimentation. We are also doing at Ola. Specifically, let's say in mobility, in our Ola Electric business. Within financial services, a key component of ours is how do we make the electric vehicle even more affordable to the customer for different use cases. We could very easily go with one product, X interest rate, Y tenure, and have that offering for everyone. But Can you have interesting leasing subscription services? Can you have different structured loan tenures or EMIs month on month evolving? How can you interestingly use the customer's telematics data to create new insurance products for the customer? I think gone are the days when motor insurance used to be um, uh, an average price for the entire cohort of customers, right? But now you can customize that product based on the data that the customer is generating on the platform. So it's a combination of empathy, customization, and personalization. How I see it all together come into a bigger picture.
Right. And how are you sort of going about personalization, within Ola? And then what's been the sort of, feedback that you're getting on that?
So we're doing a lot of work, as I mentioned, on at Ola within financial services. We have multitude of products for different customer cohorts because we've sachetized a lot of our ride sharing payment ecosystem. So in fact, Ola Postpaid today is the largest payment platform on the Ola Caps platform today. And that is made possible through hyper personalization that we've done. Insurance is a big use case of that personalization because we have a lot of data about the customer. We know the use case and what price point will the customer, does it make sense for the customer to purchase a motor insurance, for example? How do they use the two-wheeler? The renewal rates for us on our platform for our insurance is 3x that of industry.
Right.
And that is made possible because of the innovative approach that we've taken into personalization of some of these products.
Would that prompt you to develop more products going forward?
Yes. The answer to that is always yes.
But Nitin, let me bring you back here. Going by your experience, what are the key factors that hinder technology adoption among Indian digital native businesses, and how can you sort of address those obstacles?
Manu, the moment we talk about digital native companies, I think they're born in the cloud, right? So there's no question about they're not wanting to adopt technology. And there are three digital forces that are driving the technology shift in this country. One is the greater ease with which people can connect, collaborate, transact, share information, right? And another is opportunity for companies to increase productivity by automating routine tasks. And third is the great ease with which organizations can analyze data, make insights on the basis of that data, and improve decision making, right? But to specifically answer your question about are there factors which hinder technology adoption, even in DNBs, yes, there are sometimes which slow down the technology adoption. I won't say they hinder them. They, to some extent, sometimes slow down. And the first and the most important factor which slows down is the availability of resources, skilled people, because you need to invest in building those capabilities. The technology is ever evolving. Literally on a everyday basis, you have new technologies coming in. 6 months back, no one was talking about generative AI. Now, literally everyone is talking about generative AI. Now, the question is, if you want to do something in generative AI, you need to have a team or a resource who can really help you build and capitalize on that technology. So that's the first or the most important factor which can sometimes slow down your adoption of new technology. You need to make them capable, you need to hire those people, and then maybe accelerate that transformation. Second factor which can sometimes create is the ability to take those risks and adapt current business models. Because many a times what happens is a digital native company, a startup, for example, starts up on a particular premise, but eventually gets stuck on that model. Whereas if there are companies like Ola, for example, they started off on one business model, but they've evolved into so many business models and continuously adapted themselves, adopted new and disruptive models, and continuously disrupted any industry where they've entered in. But if you do not do that, then you do not use technology to the extent with which you can use. And the last thing I would say is focusing on the short-term results. Many a times, new technology, you need to give it time, resource, invest in it, and have a long-term strategic vision to say, okay, I'll use this technology for building something which might pay me off in the long run. But if you are focusing on a short-term results this quarter, this month, this year, maybe sometimes you might say, okay, I don't want to invest in this technology at this point of time because I want to deliver this quarter result or this year results. And I think that these are the three factors which I can see, or which I've seen hindering or slowing down, I would say, the adoption of new technology in digital natives.
Absolutely. And I think that ability to take risk, and we can see that with Ola. Probably next year we'll have the car from them after disrupting the bike, the e-scooter.
That's the reason I said Ola is a different example, because I've always seen Ola as a company which has always taken new bets, gone into new areas, charted new territories, experimented. If at all they fail, they shut it down immediately, move on. That's the risk which every entrepreneur has to take, a digital native has to take, because that's the culture with which DNBs are born.
Absolutely. Ankush, we spoke about blockchain earlier. In what ways do you think blockchain and sort of distributed ledger technologies revolutionize the fintech industry in the future?
So blockchain is going to be core to what I think the banking industry will adapt in the future, right? So, and this has been a theme across the world in the last 2-3 years. Blockchain was one of the hottest topics 2 years ago. Now it has died down as a buzzword, but it is still equally important. The benefits of blockchain technology remain as much today as what they were in theory before. The security, the data privacy that you can enable on a blockchain environment is an unparalleled level to what we've seen. But obviously, the financial services ecosystem is going to be the biggest beneficiary of this technology. I have no two thoughts in my mind about that. But the technology does need to be at a slightly more mature scale to have widespread adoption of it. There's a lot more work happening over there. And I think this is where what Nitin mentioned about DNB. So new age companies have to take the lead, and which we are seeing on the ground in adopting to it first, showing quote unquote the product market fit. This technology works at a certain scale, and obviously it can work at a much larger scale as well. But blockchain is definitely the future. It's the present and the future, and it has far-reaching consequences, not just in financial services, across e-commerce as well.
Right. Nitin, give us a sense, in that, how AI and blockchain, and technologies like that, how will they impact strategies and operations of DNBs moving forward?
I think Ankush gave a good example of how it can help the fintech, and I'll just take example of AI for any fintech once again. A classic example is fraud detection, right? Machine learning can help you on the basis of the complete data set which you have from a consumer or a user. And it's not only fintech, even in game tech, anywhere where there's a financial transaction, even e-commerce, be it from a consumer perspective or a seller perspective. I think fraud detection is a classic example of how machine learning and AI can really help you reduce fraud on your system by understanding the patterns of the users, consumers, and then saying, okay, this is where we should or we should not allow the transaction to move ahead. And I think that's a classic example of where technology can enable safety and security for the company.
Interesting. Ankush, now, as we go forward, what are the opportunities that will emerge for startups and entrepreneurs in the future of fintech, and how will they contribute to the industry's evolution?
I think the two trends that we mentioned in the multiple times in the past half an hour, blockchain, AI, I think these are still relatively new technologies. A lot of work to be done in both from an applied application point of view and from a technology point of view. We are seeing some application of AI in financial services. Any digital product out there, whatever part of the customer journey you want to take, that is going to get disrupted with AI. And financial services is no different. In fact, financial services is the biggest customer of that technology change. Be it, as Nitin mentioned, fraud detection, it could be in collection, it could be risk assessment, It could be in pricing for insurance. It could be robo advisory. All of these are waiting for an AI model to come in and take the value proposition to the customer to the next level, right? And that is an opportunity for entrepreneurs to come in and build that and take advantage of that space. India is a very interesting market on its own. There is headroom for growth because of technology, but there is headroom for growth for pure business opportunity also. Right. Financial inclusion is a great aspect. Now, you will see, and there's already work happening on the ground where some of these new trends of technology, like blockchain, like AI, are being used to financially include people in a much more cohesive manner. And financial inclusion is not just lending; it is banking. It is leveraging open banking. It could be insurance. So a lot of these, the ecosystem is going to come together across this. And I think the time for collaboration between fintechs and the incumbents is now. And I think this is something that the regulator has also been emphasizing over the past few years. And the strengths and benefits of working together will compound exponentially. There's obviously a specific kind of DNA that some of the DNBs bring, which can be leveraged, can be beneficial for the traditional players, and the balance sheet strengths and scale and policy frameworks of the traditional players can at the same time be beneficial for the new age companies. So I think that's another trend that you will start seeing going forward. The seeds things have already been sown over the past 2-3 years during COVID for this to happen. And you will start seeing results of that in the next 4 to 5 years.
But do you think there's some sort of apprehension, from legacy established players, in terms of collaborating with fintechs?
In my experience, especially with Ola Financial Services, no.
Okay.
In fact, we are an institute which completely works with banks.
Interesting.
Banks, insurance providers, manufacturers. People are more than willing to work with digital native fintechs.
Right. And then, when it comes to in the Indian fintech ecosystem, what are some of the top level security challenges that continue to exist, and how can you solve for that?
Yeah, I think it's not only fintech, but the overall financial industry definitely has a lot of security challenges. Specifically talking about fintech startups, they face a broad range of security and compliance pressures. Operating in the world of financial services requires fintechs to continuously raise the bar on protecting consumer data, work with regulators, and meet the exacting standards of highly regulated, security-conscious enterprise customers, right? So we at AWS help them in key 4 ways, right? The first one is AWS core infrastructure meets the most stringent security requirements in the world and provides financial service institutions with 24/7 monitoring to ensure that the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of their customer data is taken care of. We support 93 security standards and compliance certifications, more than any other cloud, and is actively acquiring more to help customers stay current. For example, EU Data Protection Directive, FISMA. Using automation services built into AWS services and features, financial services organizations like Ola Financial can remediate risks faster in accordance with their specific security and compliance needs. The second point, what we do from AWS is we have all the services or financial services customers need to ensure a layered security approach to protecting their organization's information assets. These include preventive and detective controls like AWS Control Tower, AWS Config, Amazon Guard Duty, Amazon Messi, AWS Security Hub, Amazon EKS and Amazon ECS, and encryption, obviously. The third thing which we do is to help our customers understand regulatory requirements for adopting the cloud in the geographic areas. So for example, in India, they operate in, we have created AWS Compliance Center, which is an interactive tool that provides country-specific requirements for cloud use. Any special considerations unique to that country, specifically, for example, in India, as well as quick links to AWS resources to help them navigate across cloud adoption in that country or any other country where they want to work through. This is already active and covers 54 countries, and we are adding more countries wherever there's new guidelines coming up. And the fourth thing, as I mentioned, was using the well-architected framework, which is a free tool developed to help cloud architects build secure, high-performing cloud. We take care of, they can review the state of their workloads, compare them to the latest AWS architectural best practices. So these are the four key things. There are multiple other things which we do to secure data and ensure that the customers are confident that their data integrity is intact. But these are the four key tools which we use to deliver security and confidentiality of data.
Absolutely. And I think, while we just wait for Ankush to come, I just have one question in terms of, well, the government has been a great enabler. What do you think are some of the policies that will have some of the biggest impact on the future of e-commerce and fintech, and how does that shape industry going forward? Do you think some of them are in works right now?
I think honestly, the reason why India's fintech industry has been so successful is the fundamental support from the government, right? You have to give it to the government, because if it was not for the government support, we wouldn't have had UPI. If we wouldn't have had the India stack, for example, the open API platform, be it on Aadhaar, UPI, Bharat bill payments, GST, and it wouldn't have been possible without doing this, right? So I think the government policies have literally driven the speed and the scale of India's fintech industry growth. Obviously, the initial enablers like the internet and smartphone penetration, technology innovation, everything is definitely there. Our demographic is helping us because it's a very favorable demographic. 68% of population is young. 55% of the population is in the age group between 20 and 59. So I think that helps. But I think government programs, be it the Prime Minister's Jan Dhan Yojana, the direct benefit transfer, all this ensured that right from the top, highest level of the strata to the lowest level of the strata, financial inclusion was taken care of. And the moment that was enabled, technology played its role. And I think we are seeing what it is. So I'm pretty confident that even in the future, government and regulators in India will keep playing their role to enable the growth of fintech industry.
Absolutely. Ankush, I was throwing this question to Nitin earlier while you dropped off, and that was about the kind of policies that we can expect that will have some of the biggest impact on the future of e-commerce and fintech, and whether you see them sort of shaping the industry.
Yeah, definitely. I think some of the points Nitin mentioned are very, very relevant. Policies around data privacy, the use of personal data is obviously very important in the financial services ecosystem. Beyond that, there's a lot of infrastructure layer which is being set up across fintechs and e-commerce. This could be the OCEN framework, for example. This could be the ONDC setup which is happening. And the reality of fintech or financial services is it piggybacks on commerce. Right. What I keep using in my parlance from a lending point of view is lending is a way to enable commerce. And as commerce goes through its own change, so will financial services. Across lending, across insurance, wealth tech also. And you will see a lot more regulatory sandboxes come in for financial servicing companies to work in a little bit more of a constraint-free zone initially, and then innovate, experiment, and then take their products out to market. So there's a lot of work that is happening on the ground level with respect to policy, with respect to infrastructure being built correctly for both commerce and fintech.
Right. Just one question here, Ankush. Financial services, and we Nitin had referred to this earlier, is a sector where security is absolutely paradigm. Can collaborations, help improve that or put things, in place?
Yes, I think a collaborative approach is required, but that does not take away the accountability of security from the service provider, from the core customer service provider. And security is across the value chain. It is not just data security. It could be multiple types of security. It could be transaction security. It could be monetary security, etc., etc. So the core owner obviously has to be the platform itself. But there are a lot of people in the industry who have done this. There is experience to be leveraged, and that is what we at Ola have also done, and that is what I think the industry also should do in the future as well.
Right. Now, before we move into closing comments from both of you gentlemen, I'll just ask one last question to both of you. Ankush, maybe you can just walk us through how technology can be an enabler for financial inclusion for India's urban population based on your experience.
So, having worked actually in the bottom of the pyramid segment, this is a problem that's been very close to my heart, and I do believe technology can. We have seen some improvements over the past 5 years in terms of financial inclusion, but there's still a long way for us to go as a country, and maybe even beyond India as well. The biggest point on that is, can you understand the diversity and customer cultural nuances in a diverse country like India? And that's the technology can play a very key point. Because India might be India is a digitally rich country,
Right.
And that digital data can be used to address this problem. Yeah. And with the advent of AI, etc., that is going to enable us to do that much faster than what we thought was possible, even I would say a year ago. Right. Generative journeys, customized risk models. You could. The opportunity is endless now. You can open your imagination to your data collection strategy and leverage AI to build models on your data collection itself. Yeah. Right. The industry has looked at data collection in a very linear fashion till now, which is you want to do a transaction or you want to be onboarded, you fill a form. So that journey can now be revamped completely. You can think of it from a first principles point of view. Even a conversation between two people is fundamentally data, and that can be used to understand the requirement better. That can be used to customize the product to the need and the use case a lot better than what it was before. And that is fundamentally what I see in India. You will start seeing those use cases at the bottom of the pyramid for financial inclusion across lending, insurance, and even wealth tech.
And do we have the right people, to sort of handle that whole set of data that comes in?
Yes, definitely. And obviously, having AWS as a stakeholder in that helps.
Right. Yeah. Nitin, what emerging technologies do you believe will have the greatest impact on digital native companies in the coming years? And how are you sort of preparing or gearing up for that?
I think we've talked about it, and Ankush has quoted most of this multiple times, and I'll give you an example of how this can be. But I think there are three parts of the technology which will definitely make a big impact, and what is going to really help us scale the financial inclusion. The first one is obviously data and analytics. I think the more you have the data, the better insights you can get, which will help you make far better and faster decisions. The second one is AI ML, hyper personalization, fraud detection, enabling reaching out to many more consumers and creating those cohorts. I think that's the second part. And the third one is obviously the latest kid on the block, which is generative AI. How can we create content? How can we create coding? How can we create media with the help of generative AI? And I'll give you a classic example of why I say this three will enable. If you go back just 5 years, right? And I'll take an industry which is slightly different from fintech, but related because once again, it's transaction. If you are trying to book an air ticket to go from Delhi to, let's say, Agra 5 years back, and you went to any of the OTA platforms or any airline website, and you said, okay, Delhi to Agra or Bombay to Agra, you just wanted, and you checked for it, and then for whatever reason did not book the ticket. At that point of time, the AI, if at all, whatever that AI at that point of time would know that Mr. Nitin Bhawankule wants to travel from Delhi to Agra or Bombay to Agra. And then over the next course of day till I book the tickets, I would be flooded with either emails or flashy ads on different internet websites saying Delhi Agra available at cheapest price from multiple OTAs or whatever airlines, right? That was the simple use case of AI ML, if you could call that at that point of time. That's 5 years back. It has evolved to a stage now where if I go to any OTA once again and do the same activity saying, okay, Delhi to Agra, and I want to book a ticket, and I don't book a ticket, or even if I book a ticket, now it not only shows me multiple options of the air tickets which are available and different offers which I can get, but then it starts showing me, okay, if you're going to Agra, these are the sites which you should go. You should see a Taj Mahal, you should see this, you should do this. These are the best restaurants in the place. Then I start seeing an ad from Dine-In, for example, to say, okay, these are the best restaurants available in Agra. Then someone else says, okay, if you're going to Agra, you might need a taxi. Here's the taxi service provider who can help you do that. Then at the same time, you say, okay, if you're going to be in Agra, then definitely you'll stay overnight. So there's a Taj hotel available here. I think that is what Ankush was trying to say. The moment there's a conversation, now it can be a conversation between two people, it can be between a person and a platform or two platforms. The moment you have one source of data coming in, how do you leverage it? And then how do you build an entire narrative around that? And can someone say, okay, and I will take it to the next level. The moment I've said just Delhi to Agra ticket, imagine generative AI being able to build a complete itinerary for me, rather than only enabling me buying a ticket. I think that's the power of AI, ML, generative AI, which will come up over the next few years. And I think these are the three things which I definitely can see as evolving and helping fintech specifically, because I think that's the biggest area of opportunity in India. And I think Ola is definitely going to be a key player in that.
Right. So closing comments from both of you, on the topic of our discussion, which is how will the future of fintech, how will it be different from today? Ankush, few years from now, how is it going to be?
I think I'll just use some. It's going to be inclusive, much more inclusive, especially in India. It is going to be a lot more personalized, and it will be a lot more efficient. I think those three, in my head, capture what the future of fintech would look like.
Nitin, your thoughts?
I would say it's difficult to predict what it will be, but definitely it will be far more different from what it is today. And the difference, once again, I started off by saying on both the fronts, at the scale, we can't even imagine in the next decade the scale at which India's fintech industry will be operating at. It's unbelievable what we've done in the last decade, and I think it will be unbelievable looking back after 10 years. And the second is the number of innovations which will happen to ensure financial inclusion is there up to the 140th million Indian. I think that's the way to look at it.
Right. On that note, I think we'll draw this discussion to a close. Thank you, gentlemen, for all your brilliant insights on what the future of fintech really looks like from here. So from all of us at Forbes India, thank you once again for being with us, and wish you the best for all the innovation that's going to be underway from both your end. Thank you,
Manu. Thanks a lot, Ankush. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Forbes India presents AWS The Mavericks in association with IvyCap Ventures.